Hello, third graders. We are continuing our read of The Puppy Place, and we are beginning on page 21. We left Charles in the snow, in the woods, kind of peering into kind of small place in a cliff where he's hearing a whimpering noise. Charles stood up quickly and turned to look over his shoulder. Which way should he run if that happened? Which way was out anyway? He could follow his own tracks, but then he'd be pushing through the trees again. There must be an easier way back to the trail. The trail. Where were Dad and Steve? Hadn't they noticed by now that he wasn't with them? They were probably looking for him. At least, he hoped they were. He cleared his throat. Dad! He called, but his voice seemed very tiny. Dad! He called again, louder. He heard a tiny rustle and turned around just in time to see a little brown and white face at the entrance to the small cave in the rocks. The face was framed with two long floppy ears, one brown and one white with brown spots. Definitely not a fox. Charles' heart thumped in his chest, but he didn't move a muscle. He didn't want to scare the puppy, who already looked frightened. Hi there, he said softly. The face disappeared. Charles waited, staying very still. The face popped out again. This time the puppy tilted his head in a questioning way, just like Buddy always did. Who are you? Should I be afraid? Yes, I think I will. Being afraid is always safer. Again, the face disappeared. Moving slowly, Charles squatted down. Come on, pal, he said softly. You don't have to worry. I won't hurt you. Charles thought of how Lizzie had once called him a puppy whisperer because he seemed to be able to connect with any puppy, no matter how scared or shy they were. Could he whisper this puppy out of its hidey hole and into his arms? He slid a hand into the pocket of his jeans, hoping to find at least a piece of a dog biscuit to tempt the puppy with. Nothing. He tried all his pockets, but they were empty. When he glanced back at the cave entrance, he saw that the puppy was peering out again. His face was so cute, with a big brown spot surrounding one eye and freckles of brown sprinkled all over. Charles held out his hand. Hey, Freckles, he whispered. Come on out. I don't have anything to give you, but I'm still a friend. Charles! A shout boomed behind him. Dad! Charles stood up and ran, clumping through the snow on his snowshoes into his father's arms. What are you doing way back in the woods here? Dad asked. He looked a little mad at first, but then he knelt down to give Charles a huge hug. I thought we lost you. But now we found you, Steve said, coming up behind them. I followed those tracks, Charles blurted out the whole story. It was a puppy, a brown and white one. He's so cute, but he's really shy, and now he won't come out. He finished pointing to the cave. No freckled face peered back at them. Would the grown-ups believe him? Nice tracking, said Steve, nodding. But I'm not surprised that this pup is shy. He's been living on his own for a while, from what I hear. Probably half wild by now. He dug into his jacket pocket. Still, I bet he might be tempted by something really good to eat. And I just happen to have a leftover turkey sandwich right here. Chapter 3, page 25. Steve unfolded the white paper around the sandwich, then lifted off the top piece of bread so the turkey slices showed. This looks like something that might tempt a hungry pup, hey? He held it out for Charles to take. Worth a try anyway. Charles peeled off a few slices of turkey, then walked closer to the little cave. Puppy, he called. Freckles. You've already named him? Dad asked. Shh. Charles turned with his finger to his lips. He's shy. He'll never come out if we keep talking. Dad frowned. Charles knew he shouldn't have shushed him, but he really, really wanted that dog to come out. Sorry, he mouthed. Dad nodded and waved a hand to let Charles know it was okay. He got it. He knew how much puppies meant to Charles. Charles squatted down, holding out a piece of turkey. He was hoping that the smell of meat would waft into the little cave. Sure enough, after a few moments, he saw movement, and the little face appeared again. Hi, pup, said Charles. Want some? The puppy's nose twitched, but he didn't move. Charles held out his hand a little closer. Are you sure he's friendly? Dad asked in a low voice. Charles waved a hand, meaning both yes and be quiet. The face disappeared. Charles turned around. Dad, he said. Okay, said his father. I'll be quiet. He pretended to zip his lips. Just don't get too close until we have a better idea of what this dog is like. Charles nodded and turned back to the cave. He waited patiently until the face reappeared. Then he pinched off a small piece of turkey and tossed it, hoping to get it closer to the puppy. It landed a foot from the cave entrance. The puppy's nose twitched again, but he didn't step forward. Charles saw him lick his lips. Aha, you're hungry, said Charles softly. I knew it. He tore off another piece and tossed it a little farther. This time it landed right in front of the puppy. The puppy's nose twitched. He licked his lips again. That smells so good. I'm scared to come out, but I can't resist. He bent to gobble it up. Then he cocked his head and looked straight at Charles as if asking for more. Yes, Charles said under his breath. He tossed another piece. This time the puppy didn't duck back into the cave. Instead, he gobbled that piece and then stepped forward to grab the first scrap of turkey that Charles had thrown to. He tossed another piece a little way in front of the puppy. The puppy didn't move. And then he did. He took one step, stretched out his skinny neck, and grabbed up the piece of meat. Then he stepped back. Charles sighed. This was going to take forever. His legs were tired from squatting, so he stood up to give them a stretch. The puppy disappeared back into his cave. Let me try for a while, said Steve. Charles handed over the turkey and went to stand by Dad while Steve squatted down. Steve's always had a way with animals, Dad told Charles in a low voice. He doesn't have any pets, says he doesn't want the responsibility, but he's like you. He can't ignore an animal in need. He even helps out his farmer friends sometimes when they have a baby animal who needs extra care. Dad put a hand on Charles' shoulder. Don't worry. We'll get the puppy out of there. They watched as Steve tossed piece after piece of turkey toward the cave entrance. The puppy reappeared and began to snatch up the treats. Steve stayed very still and murmured things that Charlie could barely hear. That's it. And okay, friend, and things like that. Soon Steve was making shorter and shorter throws, and the puppy was coming closer and closer to him. Charles held his breath. Now he could see how thin the puppy was and how he was shivering as he stood in the snow. Was he trembling with fright or from cold? Probably both, thought Charles. His heart went out to the brave little pup who had been living on his own all winter. What kind of dog was Freckles anyway? Lizzie was the one who could always guess dog breeds, but Charles was pretty sure that this pup wasn't any particular breed, more like a mix of several different types. He had never seen another dog quite like Freckles, not even on Lizzie's big Dog Breeds of the World poster, but Charles loved the puppy's spots, his long ears, and his sweet face. I'm running out of turkey, Steve said without turning his head, but I think I can almost grab him. Be ready if he runs past me. Charles watched closely as Steve threw one more piece of turkey, very close to the tip of his own snowshoe. The pup slowly crept closer, stopping to eye Steve every few seconds. Then when he bent his head to take the meat, Steve swept out a long arm and grabbed him by the scruff of the neck. Got him, he said, pulling the puppy into his arms. Charles saw the puppy squirm and wriggle, but Steve held him calmly and firmly, and soon he settled down. Now what? Steve grinned up at Charles. Charles opened his mouth and closed it again. He hadn't really thought that far ahead. He looked at Dad. Well, we were about due for a foster puppy, right? He asked. It had been a while since the Petersons had helped a puppy in need. Whoa, Dad held up his hands. Hold on there, he said. How can we do that? We're not home, remember? We're staying at an inn. I don't think they allow pets there. Charles looked back at the puppy who had nestled into Steve's wool jacket. He could see, even from where he stood, that the puppy was still shivering. But we can't leave him in the woods, he said. Maybe we should go back home early so we can foster him there. Dad shook his head. Nope. I promised Steve we'd help him with sugaring, and I'm not going to back out on that. Maybe there's an animal shelter around here that can take him. Charles felt his heart sink. Some animal shelters were warm, welcoming places, but even so, they were not homes. Puppies needed homes, places where they could really feel safe and loved and cared for, especially scared, skinny puppies who weren't used to people. Charles looked at the little face peeking out from Steve's arms. Steve stood up, still cradling the puppy. I guess he'll have to bunk with me for a night or two while we figure it out, he said. I don't have much room, but at least my place stays warm, thanks to my wood stove. Charles grinned up at him. Really? That would be so great. He couldn't wait to get to know this puppy, to play with him, to find out where and how he liked to be petted and what he liked to eat. You'll have to help out, though, Steve said. I can't have him underfoot while I'm trying to gather sap and boil it up. This is a busy time for me. Of course, said Charles. He couldn't stop smiling as he followed Dad and Steve back through the pine grove and down the trail to Steve's cabin. Everything was working out perfectly. We're going to stop right there at the bottom of page 33, and we'll pick that up next time. Thanks so much, third graders. I hope you have a really good day. Take care. Bye.